featuring the Champaigne leader Roberta Linn and Garth Andrews.
Bubbles in the air, they fly so high, nearly reach the sky. Then, like my dreams, they fade and die. Fortune's always hiding. I've looked everywhere. I'm forever glowing bubbles, pretty bubbles in the air.
Good afternoon. Today is 11 November, the year 2020, Veterans Day. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in Palm Springs, California. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. Today, I'm here at the museum along with fellow volunteers Diane Thompson and Daryl Peterson. And today we have the honor and the privilege of hearing the story of PFC Roberta Linn. Private Linn was in the U.S. Army WACs during World War II. And later, during Vietnam, she entertained the troops at Korat and Takli. So we're going to talk to her about that and a lot of other things.
All right.
Okay. So good to have you here, Roberta.
Thank you, Dave. I'm happy to be here.
Okay. First of all, would you please state and spell your full name?
Spell my first name. My first name is Roberta, Robert with an A on it. Roberta. My last name is Linn, Linn.
Okay. Do you have a middle name?
I do. Aline, Aline.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when and where were you born?
I was born in a little town called Gravity, Iowa. 200 population, and David hasn't changed. It's still 200 population. And that's where I was hatched.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And your father, what was his name?
My father's name was Sam Dubin, D-U-B-I-N, okay?
And, yes,
and his actually cousin, we called him Uncle Al, was head of music at Warner Brothers movies. Oh. And he wrote the whole score for 42nd Street. He wrote I Only Have Eyes for You, September in the Rain, Tiptoe Through the Tulips, Lullaby of Broadway, 42nd Street. He was quite a very prolific
Interesting.
writer.
I get movies for our library.
Yes.
DVDs, and I was just going through one. I was doing a little bit, and it was 42nd Street. And
Yes.
it's one of my very favorite.
Well, it was great. I got to watch it on the Ted Turner station
Yeah, that's
the other
where I
day.
get most of my
Wonderful
stuff.
songs in there.
Oh, they are.
He did over 10,000 songs in his tenure at Warner's, and he wrote some really great songs. And the writers never get much credit. It's usually the guys that write the music, you know. So.
Right. we were just watching Gus Kahn, a movie about him. Danny Thomas played him.
I knew Gus Kahn. In fact, I was in Hollywood and we did a show on NBC where I sang with all of the great songwriters, and they played piano, and I sat on the piano and sang their songs on the full network at NBC.
Wow, oh goodness, that was really special. Yeah. So your father, where did his ancestors? Where in the old country did they all come from?
My father's family came from Kiev, but they were mixed up. I had a little Italian, a little Russian, I think, and they came through Ellis Island.
Mostly
And
Polish, though.
yes, and in those days, now my father was born in Brooklyn after my grandparents came in, but he was a baseball player, a very, very good athlete. And when he met my mom, excuse me, he was on the road kind of working out for the Yankees, you know, in what they call the
Farm
bush
club.
leagues,
Yeah.
like a bush league. And he met my mom, fell in love, and my grandfather, who had a huge farm, he was mayor of Bedford, Iowa, and Gravity was right next door. And my grandfather, of course, raised corn and poultry for the Armour Meat Company. And when my father came through there and he met my mother, I don't know how they met exactly, but my grandpa said, well, if you want to marry my daughter, she's not going on the road with any baseball teams. So my dad gave up his baseball playing to a degree and married my mother. And then later on, when he was in Kansas City, he started a thing called the Night of Sports, where Whitey Ford, Mickey Mantle, Hank Bauer, all the guys used to come in for the Night of Sports, and they raised money for the Little League baseball teams, you know, and it's called the Night of Sports, and it was sponsored by the Kansas City Star.
Yeah. I neglected to ask you, when were you born?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, I'm only 39. I was born in 1928, April 30th, so you're looking at a 92-year-old.
And just like your friend Linda said the other day, how did that happen?
I'm sorry, I missed.
Your friend Linda the other day said, how could that happen? How could that be?
Well, I don't know. It just happened. And my whole life I've had to be a little bit older, a little bit younger. I started at 4 in show business. And I did about 20 movies as a little girl. Some I got credit for. Some were just bit parts, you know, and extra things.
Okay, well, let's circle back to your mom. What was her name and her
My
maiden
mother's name was Madge Evelyn Bristow, Bristow. French and Scotch-Irish.
Oh, okay. I meant to ask you about your father's family. Was the spelling the same as it was in Poland, or did they change it when they
No,
came
they
to-
changed it. I think the original name was Dubinsky. And when they came through Ellis Island, or to America, they changed it to Dubin.
Yeah.
And so there was Albert Dubin, Sam Dubin, and so on. And my grandma was Annie Dubin. And I don't know what my grandpa's name was. I can't think of it right now.
But your mom, what was her father's name, and what did he do?
Albert Bristow. And they came actually, the Bristow family came to America in the 1700s. And my grandpa's brother had a big steel mill up in Alberta, Canada. And my grandpa was very, very well known in the state of Iowa. As I said, he was mayor of the city of Bedford and had a huge farm with corn and he raised trotting horses too. And I have pictures of my mom when she was a little girl riding bareback on one of the horses, you know, with a long braid in the back. My mother was beautiful. She was a mixture, you know, of French and Scotch-Irish. She's a very, very pretty lady and my best friend my whole life.
And she grew up on the farm?
Did she? Did I grow up?
No, her.
Oh, yes, she did.
Okay.
Yes, she did.
And so, do you have any brothers and sisters?
Do I have brothers and sisters? Yes, I took care of my older brother until he passed away in 2009, the last 10 years of his life. He was, there couldn't have been a better human being than my brother Bill. And he was a wonderful golfer. and he took care of me when Mama was working. I'm getting tears in my eyes talking about him now. So I have a hard time because I just lost him not too long ago. I see the Kleenex there, so I'm going to reach across. And yeah, he was wonderful. He shared over and over with me all of his stories about the family. And I would pretend every time he told me the story again, I'd pretend I'd never heard it before, you know.
What kind of
But
work?
what a great guy.
What kind of work did he do?
My brother was in the car business, buying and selling used cars and so on. He lived in Downey, California, most of his life. We actually grew up in Huntington Park. When my grandfather died very suddenly, also of cancer, and what happened? My Uncle Don, my mother's brother, and my dad, they bought carloads of mink pelts with the money from the farm, and that's when the market fell. So they lost all the money on the farm, and it was quite tragic. And so all of a sudden, everybody packed up all the Bristos, and my dad and mom and me in diapers. We came to California, and we settled in Huntington Park, California, which is right outside of LA. And it's just a beautiful little city at that time. And Walnut Park was right next door. And my dad became very popular there. He ran the Grand Pacific Market. And I would sing at the ladies' club and sing and dance when I was a little tiny girl. And my mom played piano for me. She was great. But my parents really both sang very well. My dad had a good voice and my mom had a good voice, and she played piano. And she just, she made all my clothes from the time I was 3 years old until she was still sewing the day before she passed away.
What street did you live on?
We lived on Malabar and Randolph and Arbutus and Gage Avenue. I remember all of them. Isn't that sad? You know, I even remembered, I just applied for my discharge papers from the Army, and I even remembered my number. And the fellow that, you know, from the DAV, not DAV, yes, it was. Yeah. And John was his name, and he said, "How did you remember that? That's a long time ago, you know." And I remembered that number. Wow. And I don't know how I did it. I just have a very good memory. Maybe learning songs all my life. You know, you have to learn lyrics. And when I did a part in a movie or a play, I had the pleasure of doing Can-Can with Ricardo Montalban in San Diego at the Circle Arts Theater. And what a great guy to work with. And what a beautiful show. Just wonderful music from that show. And I had a scene where I did I Love Paris. And now I was falling in love with him as the judge. He played the part of the judge. And I'm on this rooftop with a 22-piece orchestra, and I had on a white fox fur and a white fox hat, and my hair was very black at the time, you know, that's my natural color. And I sang I Love Paris, and this rooftop, you know, and it looked like a rooftop. And it was just the end of the first act. It was just what a pleasure working with this lovely person, all that good music and so on. That was one of the highlights of my life.
Okay, circling back a little bit. Was your family very religious? Did you go to church a lot?
You know, there used to be a church right around the corner from where we lived in Huntington Park. And as a little girl, it was a Methodist church. And I think the family was Methodist when they came from Iowa. And I used to love to just go and sit in that church with the candles and the statues of Jesus and Mary, and just the comfort of being there. And there was something about that, you know, and it just, it was one of the things that I loved to do. I'd go and sneak in the church and sit there.
Where did you go to grammar school?
I went to grammar school. Well, you have to realize now that I was doing movies. So a lot of my education was done on movie sets. By law, we had to have so many hours of education. And so a lot of my childhood, I didn't get the chance to go to public school a lot. And then as I grew up a little bit, I went to Hollywood Professional School in Hollywood, where I went to school with Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland and Freddie Bartholomew and all of the little stars and little actors and actresses. That's where we went to school. So we had reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we also had dancing and tap dancing, ballet, voice, and so on. So I had kind of an unusual life. And then at 15, I went in the Army.
Yeah.
That was a whole different thing.
Right. We have a good friend, and she's been doing that for quite some, teaching the kids.
At the studios?
Yeah, and when they go on location,
Right.
she goes with them and tutors them or whatever.
Yes,
She's that
well,
little,
that's
little girl that played Annie in the movie a few
legal.
years ago.
That has to be done, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing, so the children don't miss out on the things that are important to them for their
Exactly,
future.
right.
You know?
So, what were some of those early movies that you were in?
Oh my. Well, Al, my father's cousin, and so on, and I called him Uncle Al. He did all the music for Al Jolson and Dick Powell, and there's a lot of other stars I can't think of right now. But where was I going now? The movies.
Some of the movies.
I remember the first movie I played the part of an angel. My mother said I was miscast. And but I was hanging on wires with little gold wings and a little gold outfit. And very young, I think I was about 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. And the only thing I could remember was this one scene where this man was walking up on this movie set on a kind of a walk, and he was going up to heaven. And the song that he sang was Going to Heaven on a Mule. And a friend of mine who's a singer and a collector of Al Jolson things here said that was Al Jolson. But I didn't know it for years. That was Al Jolson, Going to Heaven on a Mule. And I can't think of the name of the movie now. I'll think of it. I've got it in my mind. It's Wunderbar.
Oh.
But it was called Wunderbar. It wasn't Wunderbar like the German thing. It was called, he owned a bar, and the bar was called Wunderbar. Okay?
To look for that.
That was the name of it. I've been taking that Prevagen. I have quick comeback thoughts. I all of a sudden I get names that how did I remember that? It really works.
Okay, let's. You're getting in your teenage years now, and before you get into the Army, did you have any boyfriends when you were a teenager?
I had a crush on a fella that his name was Harold Shell, and he was so cute, and he was a little older than me, but I was kind of grown up because I was doing movies, I was doing stage shows, and so on. I'll tell you something about one of those. Remind me, and so he was a little older, but he had a candy apple 2-door Ford with twin pots. And you could hear that car coming for 2 blocks away, And so my mother allowed me to go to a movie with him. And all the kids in Huntington Park that had fancy cars like that, they went to the clock drive-in and they would line up all these cars and vroom, 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 and we go through and we get a Coca-Cola, and then we go through the line again and get another hamburger or something. Anyway, he was my first crush, and I used to sing for him. I was all the kids at that time. I just was a natural born singer. I really never had many lessons, just my mom and dad and the shows, the movies I was in, and so on. But he went in the Army. He was a parachute. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you what you were doing, if you remember, December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor Day.
Oh, gosh. I was in Huntington Park, and I remember when they made that announcement. And my grandmother was alive. My grandmother was taking care. We were staying with my grandma at the time. My mother and father had divorced, and it was just unbelievable. I remember when we had to cover the windows so the lights wouldn't go out because the Japanese were coming in the harbors at Long Beach. I believe, if I'm correct. You probably know more about that than I do. Mm-hmm. And but I remember covering the windows. And I just remember how shocked everyone was and how the tragedy of the whole thing. It was just a terrible day in our history. And what they did at Pearl Harbor with all those innocent soldiers. And
so you were about 10 or about 12, 11,
I guess
12, something like that.
I have to take off my shoes if I count past 10, you know, so.
Yeah. So were you up on current events? Could you see us getting into a war around that time, or do you remember that much about it?
Well, my mother, yes, I was worried about it because, you know, we lived in Huntington Park near Long Beach. Mm-hmm. And my mom used to invite a lot of the kids. I can remember her bringing some of the Navy boys home and feeding them, mm-hmm. and different Marines and so on. And we'd bring them to the house and make them welcome and mm-hmm. try to help them a bit, you know.
Was your mom working?
My mother worked at Bethlehem Steel Yards, and she was executive secretary there. My mother was a very, very talented lady. She could just do anything. She made clothes, like a designer clothes for me from the time I was, the first dress I remember, I have it in my book, I sang a little song called In My Alice Blue Gown. And I had this beautiful little blue dress, and she made me a little parasol to go with it in blue. And I was just, I couldn't have been more than 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. And she made me that dress in my sweet little Alice Blue Gown. That was a big song in those days, you know. And from the time I grew up to the time I went to Vegas, I worked Vegas for 17 years when the Rat Pack was there. In all the main rooms, you know, and so on. And my mother made all my gowns. And people used to come to me and say, where did you get that dress? And I said, my mother made it, you know. And they say, your mother made it. And you know what? They were just as pretty on the inside as they were on the outside. Everything was done by hand. And then she'd turn right around and jack up the car and change the grease pan underneath and end up with more oil on her than she had in the car. I mean, and then she took shorthand. I wanted to tell you the reason she was so big at Bethlehem Steel Yard as executive secretary. She took shorthand like 100 and some words a minute. I mean, unbelievable. And she used to copy songs off the radio for me. I'd say, oh, Mama, what the lyrics on that song? And she'd whip out a pen or pencil and take the lyrics down for me, you know.
When you were a teenager, what was your favorite music?
Big band.
The big band.
Big band, Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, you know, and I grew up with all the good music.
Yes.
The music today.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
I don't like it. I'm sorry, there's nothing to remember. You know, you remember songs from that time. You know, Jimmy McHugh, what is it? In the Mood for Love. My uncle with all of his songs. You know, you remember these songs. It Had to Be You. You know, the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. You know, all of these great songs. Can you remember one of the songs they're doing today? I can't. I can't. Rarely, you know. I mean...
we watched Dancing with the Stars, and most of the songs you're dancing to I've never heard before. I know. Have no idea what they are.
And really, I mean, they have no meaning. And rap, I'm terribly sorry. If you're anybody watching this, if you like rap music, I think it's atrocious. First of all, it's not musical. For them to get music awards for that is, to me, beyond my wildest belief. And when they first came out with some of that, some of it was so mean and ugly and nasty language. That's not how I grew up. I grew up to be a lady and to sing beautiful songs and entertain people when they came in with songs they could remember, you know.
Right. Okay. Well, let's start talking about your not so gentle side and talk about your army career.
Somebody ought to do a movie about this. Call me the sad sack of the Women's Army Corps. So funny.
How did you end up in the Army?
Well, okay. Mom and Dad were divorced. My dad was back in Kansas City, and my grandmother took care of me until she passed. Then my brother went in the Army, and he was in the Air Force. Now my mother was struggling. It was very tough times. And she was offered a position in the Army to go in and, because of her secretarial ability, to take some of the minutes. They were interrogating all the Italian and German captured men, at Fort Meade, Maryland. And so my mother said, I'm going to go in the Army. And I said, she said, I don't know what to do with you, Roberta. And I said, what do you mean you don't know what to do with me? She said, well, I was going to St. Mary's Academy at the time. And she said, I'm just going to put you in the
Convent.
in the convent. And I said, Mom, and you're going to go off in the Army and leave me? Bill's gone, Granny died, Daddy's in Kansas City, I said, please, Mama, don't take me with you. And she said, I can't take you. You're too young. I said, but Mom, when I'm fixed up, I could pass for 18, put a little makeup on me and stuff. And she said, no, we can't do that. Well, when she went to get her birth certificate, she found out that the courthouse burned down for Gravity, Iowa. So there were no records of my birth or my mother's birth because we were born in the same farmhouse with my grandmother as the midwife. And so now that was our opportunity. So she said, okay, let's see if you can pass the test. I passed the test. And the next thing I remember is getting on the train to go to the Women's Army Corps Training Center in Des Moines, Iowa.
And how old were you then?
I think about 15.
So this would have been 1943, 44?
I think so, yeah, right. I was in 3 years to the end of the war.
Oh,
okay. Yeah.
All right.
So
tell me what boot camp was like.
in the Women's Army Corps, the only one that they had in Des Moines, Iowa. And so I learned how to march. I learned how to clean my boots. We had calisthenics that we had little seersucker outfits that we wore with bloomers. And I knew how to fix my footlocker up so for inspection and to scrub the floors when they told us to. And all the basic training, okay? And so I have to tell you a funny story, though, okay? Olivia Culp was head of the Women's Army Corps. Excuse me, I've got sniffles, allergies. And she was coming to do white glove inspection of all the barracks. So we had to get our footlockers ready and the beds made accordingly, and we had to get dressed because we were going to march in front of this big reviewing stand. They had this big open field where we did all our marching, and we learned how to do that. So being a kid, I was always late, and my mother was trying to help me get ready, and she's getting ready, and I forgot to put my garter belt on. So I rolled my stockings up in my bloomers that went with my calisthenics. And I thought, oh, well, everything else was perfect. I had my hat on, my shirt, my overcoat, my gloves, my boots. And now they always put me in front of the platoon because I had rhythm. I was a good tap dancer. So I'm up, 2, 3, forward, I'm marching. Okay, we get in front of the reviewing stand and my stockings fell down. And the colonel's there. I thought the sergeant was going to kill me. I thought there was no life left for me ever, and my mother was humiliated. And it was so funny in a way, but I was on permanent KP for the rest of the time that I was at in Des Moines, I cleaned so many grease traps in the kitchens and shined so many shoes and scrubbed so many floors and did night guard duty when my mom walked with me because I was afraid, you know. And so my mother, we struggled through all of that, okay? But the funniest thing that happened, and very interesting, I was at the officers club and I was cleaning the grease trap in the kitchen, and the sergeant came and said, hurry up quick, they want to take a picture of you. And I said, well, look at me, I'm covered with grease. She said, I brought your clothes and you can dress in the back of the truck because we got to get some pictures. So I remember getting in the back of this truck and changing my clothes and getting all ready, and they took a picture of me. And the picture that I remember was the one on the poster. It's in my book. I don't know if you want me to hold it up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you get it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Wow. So they took it. Where did they take the picture?
Well, they had a building where they were shooting it, you know.
Yeah.
But I dressed in the back of the truck and got some of the grease off of me, and I posed for that poster. Well, I had no idea that it was going to become very famous. Now, there's been a lot of arguing over it, but if you look at it very closely, you can tell it's me.
And it was like a recruiting
My
post.
eyes. It was very famous. It went all over the United States. Called "Mine Eyes Have Seen the Glory." Yeah. So I was looking over my shoulder this way and up, you know, and I had my little hat on and so on. And I remember that very well. Now, there was a conflict. They saying that it wasn't me, that it was somebody else. And I said, you know, we kind of argued over that for many years. But I'm sure that's me. If you look at my pictures and you look at my eyes and so on, you can tell that it's my face. And anyway, I have been very grateful that I was able to do that that night and so on. But that's how that happened.
Did you make any good friends in the Army?
I did. They sent me to San Francisco and my mother to Fort Meade, Maryland. Imagine at that age. And there I am all by myself. In San Francisco at that recruiting center that I can't think of the name of it now. Oh gosh. But what I did a lot of recruiting and singing and so on. And eventually they did transfer me back to Brooklyn, New York. And I worked at the Embarcadero for all the fellows that were I was signing all the paperwork for them when they came back from overseas. Okay, so that's the end of the Vietnam War.
Oh, but
That was
in World War II.
World War II. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I kind of got
So,
confused there.
45,
World War
46.
II. Yeah. So I was signing all of them in, but while I was in New York, I had the pleasure of singing. You know these big 16-inch records that went out to the troops. Okay, there was a gentleman, very famous guy, a songwriter and conductor. His name was Cy Oliver.
Yeah, I know that.
Do you remember that name, Cy Oliver?
And those things were called V-discs.
Yes, they were huge. They're 16-inch.
Yeah, we have
I have some in my.
We have some here.
I
too.
have some in my closet at home. I've talked to my son about it. We should bring those over,
Yeah.
so you can have them.
Yeah.
And those were recorded live. You know, they're not. They weren't in a studio, and so they were recorded. It was in a studio, but recorded live. And everybody did. Billie Holiday did them. Doris Day did them. All of us, you know, that were in the industry at that, except me. I was a baby. No, actually, those were later. Excuse me, I beg your pardon. Doris Day came later because she and I were. She was with Les Brown about the same time I was with Welk. And so anyway, to make a long story short, all of the musicians in New York that didn't want to go overseas went in the Army, and they were the Army band in New York. And they all had penthouses and everything. They were the ones that did work Carnegie Hall and all the big Broadway shows. And when I auditioned for it, they told me that I should audition And I went up and I auditioned with Walter Gross, that wrote "The Evening Breeze collected tenderly." He wrote that song, right? So now I go up to his penthouse, and I'm auditioning with this very famous guy, and I sang a couple of songs. I think I did "It Had to Be You," and "Someone to Watch Over Me" or something. And he stopped, and he looked at me, and he said, "You know what, kid? You've never had your heart broken." He found me out. He knew that I was younger, okay? But he never said a word, and I got the job through him. He called Cy Oliver and said, "This gal's a good singer." And so I sang with the band for quite a while and did a lot of records.
Making the V-discs?
Yes, I did. I did a lot of those, yes.
Okay, yeah.
And so that was a very special time in my life.
You ready for a sip of water?
Yes, I will. Thank you, dear. Yeah.
Okay.
I've got bad allergies today for some reason.
No. That's fine.
It's good.
So you, with all your background in show business, and particularly this opportunity here, is that what kind of got you really going into what you, excuse me, had you always hoped to be a singer and a
Oh,
movie
my whole
star
life.
and
My whole
everything?
life I was singing and dancing. I was a great tap dancer. And had great rhythm. I even got to dance with Bojangles. Bill Robinson. I did a show with the Carthay Circle. And they were doing the awards from the Carthay Circle Theater. And Dick Powell was the announcer that night. And they wanted me to come out and tap dance. And I couldn't find the wings. So I was in the center of the stage, and I crawled out from under the curtain, and I came out right between Dick Powell's legs. And and Dick Powell was so funny. He was great with me, and I danced with Bojangles. I did the stair steps with him, and
Is that the
Bill
one that
Robinson.
that Shirley Temple did in the movie?
Yeah, right, just like she did in the movie. Wow. And and I did some movies with Shirley as a little girl. I was supposed to do that movie that she did at 20th Century Fox that Jane Withers eventually did it. Mrs. Withers didn't want me to do it because I was smaller than Shirley, and they wanted somebody taller that made her look cuter and stuff. But Mrs. Temple really loved me. I'm the only one that out of the whole bunch of kids that worked with Shirley on the set that they allowed to go into her dressing room. And you've never seen anything like this. This was all to scale and all in pink and white. And that was Shirley Temple's dressing room. And my mother actually made a dress for Shirley with a cute little hat, the one that I had, and Mrs. Temple liked it so much. So
We just watched a movie the other night where Shirley's, by this time she's a teenager. And
Yes.
so she's looks so different than she did when she was little. But
you know what? Her face never changed. The night that I won my Emmy Award at the Hollywood Palladium, she was in the audience with her husband. And her face, she still had that cute dimples here, and she always looked like Shirley Temple. You know how some people, they lose that baby look, but she always had that adorable face, and she was very sweet.
So when you got out of the Army, did you stay in New York then for a time?
No. Mom and I, we tried to get back to, we got back to L.A. Mom got out of the Army the same time I did, and we moved back, we got back, I don't know how we did it. We had an old Ford, and we drove across country in that old Ford, and we made it back. And I'm trying to think what happened then. Then my mother put me in private school, and she went into business with some people that came in from, their son David Holt was really becoming a big star in movies, and he got polio. And so they went into business, and my mom went to Dallas and left me in this boarding school. And the people ran out on her and left her down there stranded. So my mother took me out of the boarding school, and I went down there and auditioned with a local band, and I got the job. And so I was touring now with my mom with this band. I've had quite a life.
What kind
And
of music did that band
a
play?
big band swing, you know, and all the good stuff like Tommy Dorsey, you know, copied that. And we toured all over the South with that. There's a lot of stories I can go into, but well, one was tragic. We were in Louisiana, Lafayette, I think. And it was a little bitty town, and we got stranded there. What happened? Somebody cut the tires off our car, and we were stranded, and we didn't have enough money to buy the tires. So I got a job singing with a guy that was playing piano behind a bar. And there was a military base there. And I sang, oh gosh, I sang there. And what happened, you remember when motels had little cabins? Instead of like being like a motel like we see today, they had separate cabins. And I was singing with that band, and we had all our clothes and the money that we had gotten that night. My mother hid under the mattress, and we went to get a hamburger. And on our way back, and in a little bitty town like that, when they had a fire, all the lights went on, stoplights went on. It was just a small town. And I made a joke. I said, what a night for a weenie bake. When we get there, it was our cabin.
Oh.
And it burned down with all our money, all our clothes, and we were stranded. So we teamed up with this guy and his wife that was playing in this bar. And he had to get to Lake Charles, Louisiana, to audition for another orchestra. And he said, I'll tell you, if we can get some tires on your car, we'll do that. If you'll drive me down there with my wife, maybe I can get you on that band. So we stopped we just got to this one town, we ran out of money. And there was a big Quonset hut, and they had gambling. So we went inside, there was an old piano in there. So I can't remember this guy's name now. But he started playing Stormy Weather, da da da, ba da 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 da, and I knew the song, so I started singing. And the guy that owned the place loved that song, so he gave me $20. And he said, "Sing it again." So la da da. I never sang Stormy Weather so many times in my life, and every time I'd sing it, he'd give us another $20. So that paid for our motel, food. And we got to Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I got the job with that band, with him. And so we're at Lake Charles, and my mother played they had bingo, and my mother played a bingo card and won $250. So my mom said, we're going home. So with that $250 and whatever else we had, we got back to Huntington Park just by the skin of our teeth. And that's how we got back to California. And then shortly after that, I started plugging songs for Chappelle Music. In those days, they had piano players that played for the singers, and you'd go on radio shows and plug the song, and they'd give you $15 or $20
What
for
is
doing
plugging
it.
the song mean?
Plugging a song means like let's say, I'm trying to think of some of the songs that I plugged. There was one that became very famous, Symphony, 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 and I introduced that song on the Jenny Sims show. Okay, and so by doing it on the show, then they got credits, the publishing company got credits for that. So they were able to make money, and they had people like myself that could sing, and so on, and go out and do
You would sing the song?
Yeah, and plug these on the different radio shows. Then that went national, and then the song, people would go in and buy the lead sheets. Then I auditioned for Lawrence Welk'S manager. And by this time, I think I was 17 or 18 years old, something like that. Okay? And Sam Lutz, it was Gaby Lutz and Heller, and they were one of the powerhouse management. They had Liberace, they had Frankie Lane, they had K-Star, they had Lawrence Welk, but nobody knew Lawrence Welk in California. Okay, so I auditioned for him. He said, "You're too young. When you get out of, he didn't realize that I'd already had my education pretty much. And he said, when you give me another year and I'll see if I can put you somewhere." Well, Lawrence Welk opened at the Hollywood Palladium and he was looking for a girl singer. So I ran into Sam at Sunset and Vine, which was close to Chappelle Music where I was doing the song plugging. So he said, "Lawrence Welk is at the Hollywood Palladium." I'd never heard of Lawrence Welk, had no idea who he was. He was very big in the Midwest, but nothing in California. So
He didn't have a TV show at that time?
Oh, no, this is way before the television show. So he said, "Go over there tonight, get yourself fixed up so you look, tell him you're 20 years old." And I said, "Put a little makeup on and stuff, and go over there and tell him I sent you." So we got there at 7:30, and there were about 10 people on the dance floor and about 100 girl singers there. So my mother and I are, have you ever been to Hollywood Palladium by any chance? Look, you know how Shell Oil, how they have the sign that starts small here and it comes around this way like a shell? Okay, that's where the bandstand was. And then you went down to the dance floor and then they had the bars and the tables up here. Well, Mom and I were sitting right by the bandstand. Well, they had all these wonderful singers on. Okay, now it's about 12 o'clock at night. We'd sat there since 7:30. And so the manager walked over to Lawrence Welk and he said, "Larry, if you audition one more girl singer, you can take your accordion and your bubbling machine and go back to Yankton." And my mom looked at me and she said, "You go over there right now and tell him that Mr. Lutz sent you, and we've been here since 7:30. She said, "If you don't go sing one song, I don't care if you don't get the job, you go and ask him to sing one song." And she said, "If you don't ask him, I'll kill you." And I said, "I don't want to die, Mom." So I went over and I tapped Lawrence Welk on the shoulder and I said, "Mr. Welk, my mom said if you don't let me sing one song, she's going to kill me." And he started to laugh and I said, "Mr. Lutz sent us, but we've been here since 7:30. And I said, "I know you're not going to hire me. You've heard some wonderful singers." And I said, "But please let me just sing one song so my mom will be satisfied." So he said, "What did you say your name was?" And I said, that's the way he talked. And I said, "My name is Roberta Linn." He says, "Roberta Linn." Every B with Lawrence Welk was a P, so it was Roberta Linn. "That's a nice name, kid. I hope you can sing." So he said, "Oh, do you know I'm as corny as Kansas in August?" I said, "Yes, Mr. Welk, I just learned it." He said, "Okay, kid, there's an 8-bar intro. You're going to sing a chorus. Then the band's going to play a half a chorus, and you're going to come back in, and then I'll get you out." So I got in okay. I got out okay. The key was perfect. And he came over and he looked at me. He said, "You know, Roberta, you're the new Champaigne lady." I got the job. And I didn't have to die. And that's a true story. And that's how I got it, you know.
When Lawrence Welk hired you, would have been the late 40s most likely?
Yes, I was hired the last week of 49.
Okay.
And I stayed with him, actually. If you look at the stuff people put out, they don't know what they're writing about. I stayed with him until 55. I was there when I was the first television Champaigne lady. And I had no idea.
So when he was going around...
Are you recording now?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So when he was, before he hired you, he would have
he had
Champaigne
other
ladies
singers.
and stuff like that.
Whether he called them Champaigne ladies or not at that time, I'm not real sure. But he had other singers, and they were all wonderful. And we did a 4-hour TV special in Branson, Missouri at the Lawrence Welk Resort called Milestones and Memories. And that was in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. and all the ladies were there, and myself, you know.
But his champagne stick, when did that come about, or how did it come about?
Well, it was always champagne music.
Oh, is that what
when
he
he
called
first started out, it was the Hawaiian Fruit Gum Orchestra. Out of Yankton, South Dakota, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I was going to say north or south, but it was the Hawaiian Fruit, Lawrence Welk and his Hawaiian Fruit Gum Orchestra. And then later on, when he started working in the big hotels, they told him to add champagne to it.
Oh,
so
I see.
that's where it came. So it was the Champagne Music Makers. And the lady on the band then was called the Champagne Lady. And every band always had a girl singer and a boy singer. You know, that's how they started.
The Yankton, was there a group called the Yankton Yanks or something like that?
Probably. And there was a polka band.
Right, that's what they were.
Somebody Yankovic and his...
Oh, yeah. Yankovic.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's
And I used to love to watch the people dance. Lawrence, we had a great band. You know, it was a commercial band. It wasn't like a jazz band, and you know, but we were just a wonderful band, and I loved every guy in that band. And I was.
Who was the man when you were touring around before television? Did you have the same male singer the whole time with you?
Oh yeah, but let me tell you, he hired me on a Thursday night. On Sunday, I did my first recording with him, Salagadoola, Michikaboola, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. And on the other side was A Dream Is All Wish Your Heart Makes. And that was my first recordings, and that was with Mitch Miller on Mercury Records. On Monday, we left on the road in a fleet of cars. We did not have a bus. And we drove 300 miles a day because we were under contract to ABC Radio, and we had to be in a different city each week. So we averaged about 300 miles a day, and we did 42 weeks of one-nighters in a circle and came back to Los Angeles and opened at the Aragon Ballroom to 10 people.
And that's where the TV show a lot of times was located, right?
We had 10 people on our opening night on the dance floor. Nobody knew Lawrence Welk. And all the guys and myself were talking backstage. We thought, well, back on the road again. And none of us wanted to go. We were tired. We really worked hard. 42 weeks and one-nighters with 300 average a night is a lot of work.
Were you the only girl on the...
I was the only girl in the band, yeah. And so we got back, we opened at the Aragon. And now they're doing the Royal Hawaiians. Harry Owens and the Royal Hawaiians were filming out of that Aragon Ballroom because it was on the water. So they could film off the back and look at Catalina like they were in Hawaii. So they had the water and they had that setting, but they had all the equipment there. Couldn't get it open?
I did.
You did?
Isn't this it?
Oh, that's my purse.
Or maybe it's in here. There wasn't anything.
No, that's my Emmy Award in there.
Oh,
No, it's a little black makeup case.
we didn't
But
see
don't,
it, Roberta.
huh?
Heather even showed. I had her go.
You didn't see it anywhere?
Uh-uh.
Maybe she didn't get it in there. Maybe it's in that case with my Emmy. Anyway, so they had all the remote trucks out there and the cameras. And Klaus Landsberg was a genius. He invented the color tube for RCA. He was, they called him the important German immigrant. And where was I? Oh, he was the one that started with the 3 cameras. When they first started television, they had 1 camera and they had to move it around, which was very inconvenient. With 3 cameras, he could be on the singer, he could be on the trumpet player with a solo, he could be on the drummer for the next thing. So he was able to, and he was a great, he read music. So he'd have the music in front of him so he knew when to call the shots and who it should be on. Klaus Landsberg, remember that name. That man was one of the most important people to the beginning of television ever. And he died very young. They had a mole on his waist. It turned out to be cancer. They took it off, and he died very, very young. but a brilliant man, and he was so wonderful to me. I was on every magazine cover. I won every award. He just loved me and promoted the heck out of me. And so I became a very, very, very big star. I didn't have any idea. I really didn't. I just loved what I was doing, and the people in the audience, the most loyal fans in the world are the Lawrence Welk fans. They're good people, they're honest people, they're lovely people. They love to dance, they love the music, and they loved Lawrence Welk. And we had the last singer that I can remember that was Gene Purcell. But Garth Andrews he was a wonderful singer. I loved working with Garth. Robbie Rockwell looked like Ishkabibble, from the Kay Kaiser Band. And but our lead trumpet player, Clarence Willard, worked with Paul Whiteman. And we had the best musicians and the wonderful arrangements and loyal fans. And I can't even tell you how much I enjoyed working with that band. I didn't want to leave. And what happened, Dodge bought the show with me on the contract. I was an important part of the band at that time. And I don't know what happened. I can't even tell you what happened. I think Sam Lutz or Gaby Lutz and Heller, they got annoyed about something. And they really caused the split between Lawrence and I. And I loved working for Lawrence. He was like a proud German papa. He was not easy to work with, and I mean, you followed the rules. And but he was wonderful to me. And so anyway, the next thing I know, I was offered my own TV show.
Well, so I could just one second. What network were you on Lawrence Welk?
What, honey?
Which network?
KTLA. It was Paramount Television. Paramount Studios owned KTLA. It was the first important TV station in California. And he had the Spade Cooley show. He did the first ever Bob Hope show. He had time for Beanies, Space Patrol. They did I can't think of the guy's name now, but they did the wrestling matches. Mm-hmm. And they had that thing, remember when that little girl fell down that well? And Stan Chambers was the announcer on the station at that time. And they did that thing, getting that little girl out of that well, I remember that. And but Klaus was brilliant. Before he passed, he got out of a sickbed at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital and went with the Marines and went up on the mountains and set up all the transfers, the big, what do you call them?
Radar.
Radar. The radar systems to show the first atomic bomb. He's the one that set that whole thing up in Nevada, and out of a sickbed with cancer, and he died shortly after that. But he was. They should do a movie on his life or something. His son Clevie Landsberg and I are very close right now, and he's producing movies. And
but your show was syndicated, correct?
Well, my show was a national.
No, I mean.
It was a national syndicated show for the Gas Appliance Dealers of America.
I meant the Lawrence Welk show.
Oh, no, it wasn't. It was. Yes, it was in a way. It didn't really get big syndication until he went to ABC. Okay. With Dodge. But at the time, I said to my mom, I said, "What should I do, Mom? I don't want to leave Welk, but I've got a show offered to me now through Klaus with the Gas Appliance Dealers of America, which means that would be my show, and it would be going out all over the country, syndicated." And I became a very big part of the gas appliance dealers, opening big housing developments and stuff with the gas appliances and so on. And they flew me all over to do these things and so on. And that's when I won my Emmy Award. If I'd won it on the Welk show, my Emmy would have been this big. But I have my Emmy in the
let's
in
see.
that
Yeah,
case
good.
right there, yeah. But mine is the full size. The full size Emmy stands about this tall. You'll see when we bring it over here.
And I meant to ask you,
Pardon?
Linn, your last, how you were Roberta Linn.
Always.
Where did the Linn come from?
Well, Linn was part of my middle name. And but I've been using that as a professional
I see.
name.
Oh, okay. So
Okay,
all
here
right.
we go. This is my Emmy.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Here's my Emmy award.
Oh, yeah.
And see how big it is?
Yeah, it is.
Now,
Yeah,
if it
is
was
big.
a local, it would be about here.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, I see.
But these are all really 24 karat gold. And this says the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, Hollywood Achievement Award, most outstanding female performer of 1953, Roberta Linn.
Whoa, wow.
I was nominated
no
4
idea.
years in a row.
Oh. That's amazing. Yeah. So do you remember who presented it to you?
Yes, okay. I'm having a senior moment right now. The guy, that was on
Jimmy Stewart?
no,
No.
not Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, Jack Benny?
No, this is the guy that had the big show in New York with all the entertainers. Came out of New York. Oh, dear, dear, dear. I have a tape of it at home, too. I know you know who I'm talking about. He had Elvis Presley on the show.
Oh, Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan, and it gave me my award. Thank you.
Can I make a copy? I'd like to add that, what you were talking about, the Emmy Award,
Right.
to what we're doing here.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
That'd be great.
That's quite an honor. I was nominated 4 years in a row, and I beat my friend Betty White out that year. And I was really, thanks to Klaus and KTLA, I was very, very popular. I was the queen of the Hollywood parades. I was queen of the firemen. I had a picture taken with me sitting with all the awards that I got. I was so young, and I didn't realize what I had.
Where did they film your shows?
At a theater that was right across from the entrance to Paramount. I'm sorry. Just teared up a bit. I was such a lucky girl. Lots of nice memories. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Did you have any romantic interests in those days?
I'm
any
sorry?
romantic interests at that time?
No, I was so involved in my career at that time, and I had a lot of men that were interested in me, but I wasn't really interested in getting involved at that time. I was so involved in my career.
So you could call the shots pretty much on your show? I mean,
Well, Klaus was directing my show,
Okay.
And that's before he passed away. And
Did you have guest stars on your show? Or?
yes, I did. I had Jean Simon, I had Josephine Premise, I had Margin Gower Champion, Josh White. It was called, originally it was called The Gypsy. And the setting for the show was like a continental a cafe with strolling violins and the four middlemen. Do you remember Thurl Ravenscroft? Thurl Ravenscroft did use Ajax the foaming cleanser.
Yeah.
He had that basso voice that was so identifiable. A dear friend of mine, and he was the lead singer in the Middlemen. And you can tell him on every record that he ever made. We were very, very dear friends. And they were the waiters on the show. And we did a different country every week. And I had to learn a lot of these in a foreign language. And I'm very nearsighted. And I had to use cue cards sometimes for these things. And I'm trying to read these things and I couldn't read them, so I'd make up lyrics. So somewhere I had to sing something naughty. I just pronouncing it wrong. And I thought about this so many times. But what a lovely show. And Ina Ray Hutton was doing her show at 9 and I was doing mine at 7:30 in the same theater. And Ina Ray had that all-girl band, a beautiful blonde,
Right.
And we were really good friends. Yeah.
Was that a 30-minute or 60-minute show?
My show was 30 minutes, I think. And but it was so well done, and Klaus was producing it with 3 cameras, and I had my full. I could go to Western costuming at Paramount and pick out any costumes I wanted. And I remember I picked out one time that who was the one that had the underneath the lamppost by the garden gate.
Yeah.
You know who I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What was her name? Gee, I want to say. I know. I've got it on the tip of my tongue.
Not Edith.
Anyway, she wore this in a movie that she had. In those days, you couldn't have any cleavage. If you had a gown that was low, you had to put net in here. They were very strict about that. No booze on the table, no bottles that looked like liquor in our cafe. And the stomach was like a bra top, and the stomach was a nude material. And I wore this on the show, and every time I would turn, of course, this material would. And when I got home, my brother was hysterical, my older brother. He said, "Boy, did you look dumb in that outfit." He said, "Your stomach looked like it was rolling the skin." And I said, "Well, that was the material, it wasn't my stomach, And when I thought about how silly I must have looked on that show, but that's what, those are funny moments that you remember, the things that happened. One of the funniest things was Lawrence Welk's first show. We got on the air, and remember I said every B was a P with Lawrence Welk, okay? So his opening line was, "Good evening, my friends, and welcome to our very first Wwii show. Here from the beautiful Aragon Ballroom on Lick Pier, Santa Monica, California." He said, "Tonight we got the lovely Champaigne lady, Roberta Linn, and all these wonderful poison to pen." And then he looked at me, and the boys, he said, "Okay, Roberta, okay, boys, it's our first Wwii show, and I want you all to pee on your toes." Well, the band, the guys are going, they're trying to blow their horns. And every time Lawrence would make these mistakes, I would break up laughing, He didn't know what he said. He was trying to tell us to be on our toes, sure, to really do a good show. It's the first one. But he told us to pee on our toes. And I will never forget, and I was there that night. All the people that come latelys that have done the show after me, they talk about it all the time, but I was there. And I couldn't stop laughing. He came to me after the show and he said, "Roberta, what did I say?" And I said, "Lawrence, you told us all to pee on our toes." And he said, "Of course I did." And I said, No, Lawrence, it's be on our toes, not pee on our toes." And he said, "Oh my goodness." Variety magazine, which is the Bible of show business, had a headline. Said Lawrence Welk started his first Wwii show. And after the band peed on their toes, the show got underway. I mean, you had to understand, he did a thing one time, since we're talking on Veterans Day here and so on. He was reading a cue card and he said, "And now, folks, we'd like to do a medley from World War I." You had to really appreciate. They made fun of his accent a lot, but that's what made him funny and cute, and people loved him for his mistakes, you know. And I loved working with that man. I can't tell you.
Now, on your show, you had a studio audience.
Oh yes, we did. We had a live audience in a lovely little theater.
Were they usually the same people would come back over
Oh,
and over?
yes. I have a picture that someone sent me. I should have brought it to you. He was the usher at my show, and he sent me a picture. He and his wife have been coming and bringing me to dinner here. You know, we were very close, and he was very young, and he's standing on the side of the theater. The people are wrapped all the way around the block, you know. We were very popular, and we do autograph, go out and autograph our records, and we had so many people. I'd have blisters on my hands by the time I finished signing the records. That's how popular the show was. It was. And it was wonderful for me to be part of it.
Did you do any movies after this, after your TV career?
We did some, actually we did some films at Universal Studio with the band, shorts. One of the things that I do remember, I did a movie called Senior Jim, with Conway Terrell and Barbara Bedford, that were big stars early on in movies. And I actually had credits for them. Somebody sent me, I have the film. There's a genealogist and been working on my career. He sent me the big reels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he paid $1,300 and sent it to me. Wow. I tried to do something back. He said, no, this is my gift to you. I got credits in that movie. Now, there were times in the movie, because my name sounded very Jewish, the Dubin and Dubinsky, and there was terrible anti-Semitism in Hollywood at that time, I had to change my name. So I worked, I did several movies with Mervyn LeRoy, where I played Olivia de Havilland's sister and Anthony Adverse, and I did some other really big movies. I can't think of all of them right now. Where was I going with this story now? I was trying to chase. Oh, when the Senior Jim came out, I had to work under the name of Alberta Dugan. So they took my grandpa's name, Alberta Dugan, D-U-G-A-N. So you can go on and find movies that I appeared. Mervyn LeRoy loved me. I did a lot of movies with him as a kid. And
he did a lot of TV too,
yeah,
didn't he?
now that movie showed at the $1 Million Theater in downtown Los Angeles, and the band was Cab Calloway. Hidey, 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 oh, remember? And I danced and sang. We did 5 shows a day. I had a tutor backstage, and I sang in between each of those movies. Sang and danced with Cab Calloway at the $1 Million Theater as a little girl, yeah.
Where is it still there, the $1 Million Theater?
I think it is. I think it's still downtown LA, yeah. Excuse me for getting emotional.
No.
So many of these things are very dear to my heart. And the time, and I've been so lucky. You know, I mean, I have so many friends that say, did you really do this? And, you know, I've toured with Bob Hope. Bob, a very dear friend of mine. We did the opening of the grand opening worldwide of the Seven Little Foys in Australia, and we did Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne, and I loved working with him. I did my own spot, but then I did all the Jane Russell things with him too, you know, Buttons and Bows and so on, and I did a comedy stints with him. He was just great. He would tell me sometimes, he'd say, Roberta, when I do this line to you, give me a little, pause a little bit before you come back in. And if you pause and let me do my little thing, we'll get a bigger laugh. Every time it worked. He just had perfect timing, and I loved working with Bob Hope. We did a lot of shows. I did shows with Jane Russell with him, and Jerry Colonna, and Dennis Day, you know, and we did a lot of military bases and so on. Not overseas as much as we did here in the States. But so what a great guy.
When did you start getting involved in Las Vegas?
Actually, after I left Welk, I worked with a gentleman that was head of the choreography in Paramount Studios for the all the Elvis Presley movies, etc. His name was Charlie O'Kern, and Charlie O'Kern staged my act. Nelson Riddle did my music, and I did a big medley of my uncle's songs, of course. I closed the show with that. Did 4 costume changes. I had to lose a lot of weight because I was overdressed, and I took the first dress off. I did Everything Happens to Me, and the slip fell in the front of my dress. It was short in the front, long in the back, and I could press a little thing on the side, and the slip kept falling down between my legs. And people were watching in the audience, and people were going, and of course I had to keep a straight face, you know. And once this all came, then I tore that dress off. Then I'm in a cocktail length dress, you know, that was aqua sequins to royal blue, and then it had a straight front in the aqua and the royal blue. That was actually my tuxedo jacket. It was hanging on my hips. It was on a soft material, but it had all this beautiful tulle around, you know. So I would whip the skirt off and drop it on the floor and take off the thing. Now I'm in a leotard, cut up to my hip bones, quite a change for Lawrence Welk. And when I went into Lullaby Broadway, they threw me up a hat, and I learned how to twirl the hat and a cane over here. And I'd already picked up the jacket. It turned into my tuxedo jacket. So I put it on, and now I've got my hat and my cane. Come on along and listen to, you know. And that was the closing of my show. And yeah, I opened with Marge and Gower Champaigne at the New Frontier Hotel. Second engagement was with Daddy Thomas at the Sands. Then I worked the Desert Inn with Jimmy Durante. Then I headlined my own show at the Riviera. And then I was still going out and doing a lot of big one-nighters and so on, you know. And and then I was at the Riverside Hotel in Reno, and my husband he wasn't my husband at that time. He was in the lounge with his group, Freddie Bell and the Bellboys, and I'm in the main room with my show. And of course, I was doing that same act where I did all the changes and so on. And so one night, I used to go in and watch Freddie work. He was so talented. And I was standing at the end of the bar, and I remember it was cool because I had on like some Levi's and a sweater and tennis shoes. And I'm standing at the end of the bar watching them work behind the bar. And before they went on, somebody came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and it was Fred. And I turned around, and he said, "Wow, you're not 6 feet tall." I have very long legs, and I had high heels on and in that leotard. So he thought I was really tall, and he was tiny. He was like 5'8", 5'9". And so he said, "After the show, can I take you to breakfast?" And I said, "Yeah." That's how we met. And then we had a romance, and then a couple of years later, we got married.
And your son?
And yes, and now here's interesting. I was still doing my own shows, and Freddie was doing his shows. So after we had Freddie Jr., that was difficult. And my mother was there. I bought her own house in Vegas, and she took care of the kids for me. And Freddie first, who runs the Air Museum, by the way, and Freddie Bell Jr., and I used to go in and watch Freddie work at the Sahara when he was in the lounge. Well, that's when Louis Prima and Keely Smith were headlining the lounge. And you could go in, no, you didn't have to pay anything. Go in and have a free breakfast and a free drink and watch a great show. Well, Louis Prima and Keely Smith decided to leave the Sahara and go to the Desert Inn. So on the late shows with Fred, I used to jump up on stage with him, and we'd fool around a little bit, you know, and do a couple of little songs with the band. So the fellow that was booking all the talent at the Sahara came to Fred and I one night, and he said, "You know what, you guys are so great together. Now you have the baby. You're going one way, he's going another. Why don't you team up? I'll give you 42 weeks a year at the Sahara for 5 years with graduating money, and you'll headline." So I looked at Fred and he looked at me and I said, wow, that sounds like a pretty good deal. We'll be in one place. We had a beautiful home at the time on 5 acres. And so we took that gig. So that's when Fred and I teamed up. And then we became a very important act. We worked the Cope in New York. We worked Puerto Rico twice a year at the Americana. We worked all over the United States. We had a great act together. Freddie with his rock and roll, and me with the big ballads. And then we team up and do impressions, you know. And Variety called us a hurricane of talent. You know, we had a wonderful act.
A couple of your videos that I found were
with Freddie.
Staged there with Freddie and in Las Vegas.
That was in Pioneer Town.
How did that come about?
Debbie Reynolds and her husband Harry Carl owned a company called Scopatone. And what it was like people, they had a box on the table or on the bar or whatever, and you could put in a quarter and there were screens up so that you could see the entertainment instead of just playing the music. So that was called Scopatone. So they asked Freddie and I if we'd like to do a couple of things. So we did Tweedledee, and we did, my uncle wrote I Will Gather Stars Out of the Blue for You. But they put it to that kind of country or twist. That was terrible choreography. I look at it now and I think, oh my gosh, you know. But at the time, the twist was very popular, so everybody was doing one of these things, you know. And I look at that and I think, oh my goodness, that's so corny, terrible. But I like that one better than I do the Twiddly-Dee. For some reason, you know, that was done at the Desert Inn golf course.
Yes.
But that's how that came about.
So I don't know if we jump this far ahead or not, but I know the other day you were mentioning during Vietnam that you were up in Thailand at Karat and Takli.
Right.
I guess, were you with the USO then?
No, there was a booking agent that also booked Sinatra in the Orient. He had some shows over there, and he booked a lot of shows. Fred and I had the bellboys with us, and Fred and myself. We were scheduled, you know, when they had the war over there, how they got entertainment to those guys. They would take you in a helicopter and drop you in, and you would do a show for them, actually behind the lines. So you had to get in and get out fast. So our group was too big. There was the guys. There were 6 guys. There was 8 of us. So it was too difficult to get instruments out, get us back on the plane. So they hired another girl and 3 guys, and you know, they got killed. The Viet Cong killed them. They went in on a Jeep, and that was our there before the grace of God went us. But in the meantime, we went out of Bangkok, and they drove us up to Takli and Karat. Now, we did the NCO club there, both of them. The one that I particularly remember, they had lost 2 pilots that day. They only gave them enough gas in those planes. They were bombing in North Vietnam at that time, and the bombs were huge. Okay, so they had to go in, make the drop, get back right away because they ran out of fuel. So they lost 2 planes that day. And
they're flying F-105s, the Thunder Chiefs.
Is that what it was?
And they were quite large planes.
They were, and they had huge bombs on them. And this is what they told us. Okay, so now we walk into the NCO club, and I think I can't average it, but I would say there were maybe 200 guys sitting in there waiting for the show, and beer bottles all over the tables, and a jukebox playing, and hardly anybody was talking. You know, I mean, they were really sad. They were like a family. These pilots meant a great deal to them, and getting them ready to go out and do these things and knowing the danger that was involved in it. And so the guy that was running the thing, he said, don't do any sad songs, don't do any ballads, keep everything up tempo. Try to get these guys motivated if you can, please. So Fred and I, we looked like a couple of Mexican jumping beans on that stage. We were jumping all over the place. We were dancing. We were singing. We did every fast song we could do. We finally got them moving and applauding and having some fun with us. And Freddie was very funny. My husband, he made me laugh all the time. I think that's why I married him. He was funny. And what do you think they wanted to hear at the very end of the thing? I left my heart in San Francisco. And I sang that, and they all got up and held hands and swayed and sang and danced with me. And I will never forget that. I sang at Yokosuka Naval Base in Japan for the fellows that were shot up so bad. I went in the wards and sang. It smelled so bad from the wounds and stuff. I'd go in and sing, and my guitar player would go in with me, and I'd sign their casts for them and write some little notes for them for their family, and go out in the hall and throw up and then go back again. You know, it was really tough. One of the toughest moments that I remember, you know, these kids were all so young, and we were in Singapore at a motel, and these guys were given R&R for 5 days. And I had a bunch of the boys around me, and one little fellow that was sitting next to me, he looked to me to be about 18, 19, maybe not over 20 years old. And I'm singing a pretty song that they asked for. And all of a sudden, he looked at me and he said, and he never said a word. And I didn't know what to do at that point. And the guy sitting next to me went like this, don't say anything. So I found out later from his friend that he was in a helicopter and his partner got shot right between the eyes. And he never said a word. And I will never forget that moment with this young boy. It was a terrible war. It was a terrible war. And now all of these beautiful guys who were over there to do their job came back with no love, no recognition. So that's when I wrote Welcome Home, My Hero in '96 for a huge parade that was in their honor. It was a big parade. It was at Lake Havasu. You'll probably say, how could it be big there? But people came in from all over. And the Army people came in, and they had all the Vietnam vets. So the mayor of the city, I was doing some public relations for a friend of mine at the time that owned a resort there. And he said, Roberta, he said, could you write something special for this? So I sat down that night and I wrote Welcome Home, My Hero. Welcome home, my hero. We're so proud of what you've done. You give the world its freedom. You are truly freedom's daughters and son. Yes, welcome home, my hero. You're brave beyond compare. You fought the finest battles on land and sea and in the air. It seems so unreal to know that you had to go to fight on foreign lands. But heroes go where they must go to free their fellow man. Yes. Yes, welcome home, my hero. You've really made us proud. And now the world can stand united and they shout your praise out loud. Can you imagine the happiness that we all felt when we knew the war would end? Emotions grow and tears will flow to have you back again. Welcome home, my hero. You're really standing tall. The whole world shares your victories and they shout out freedom's call. Yes, welcome home, my hero. We really love you all. Welcome home. Welcome home. Yes, yes, welcome home, my hero. Welcome home.
Okay, you were talking about Newport Beach.
Well, I wanted to get Fred out of Las Vegas, my husband Fred, because he was gambling too much and so on. And I just didn't think it was a good environment for the children. By then I had my daughter Angela, and I still had my mother with us and so on. So we were driving to San Diego in a motorhome, and I saw this place for lease. It was called the Jamaica Inn in Newport Beach, and it was quite a very popular place. Had a motel next to it and so on. It was right on Coast Highway.
I've seen it before. I think it's still there.
And no, it's a Coldwell Banker real estate office. They took it out. You know, I just saw it recently because I did a show down there. And unbeknownst to my husband, Fred, I wrote down the telephone number for a lease on this Jamaica Inn. And I called the fellow that, I think his name was Warner, if I remember. And so I called him and I said, I would love to find a place for my husband and I to kind of settle down with the family and be out of Las Vegas and that environment with my children. What would you want for the lease? He said, I want $1,500 a month. Well, I went, holy mackerel, that's a pretty good deal. You know, it had a big kitchen, it had a big dining room, it had a long bar, and a wonderful place I could do a showroom. Okay, so I made the deal. And I thought Freddie was going to kill me at first. But it was a great thing. We rented a house there. We went in. I scrubbed the kitchen on my hands and knees. I designed the showroom with Fred. And we became the most popular place on the West Coast. It was called the Inn Place. Roberta Linn and Freddie Bill's INN Place. John Wayne was there almost every night. Raquel Welch lived up the hill. Clint Eastwood used to sail in and bring all his friends in. And I had Count Basie, one nighter Woody Herman, Stan Kenton, Lionel Hampton, Sarah Vaughan, Buddy Greco. I had a connection with the agency that booked Fred and I that handled all these bands. So they were coming either in or out of Las Vegas, from LA, back and forth. So it was a good stopover. And I could bring them in, and I could pay them fairly good money, you know. And we had the motel, put them up, house them, feed them, give them good money, and get them on to Vegas. And if they wanted to break any material in, they could do that. So we had that for about 3 years, and we did quite well. And then our marriage broke up. And I think it was a little bit too much togetherness. You know, it's hard to work 24 hours a day. And being a wife, an entertainer, a husband, an entertainer, running a business, you know, and so that was the end of our act, and Fred went his way and I went my way, and it's very sad, very sad.
When's the first time you came to Palm Springs? When you were a kid, did you ever get down here?
Oh my goodness. I have a book I'm making up right now. And I've been cleaning out my garage, so I found stuff, books, the Palm Springs Life books and so on in a big box. I was on the cover of that several times in there a lot. I worked the Chi-Chi Club. I came my first time to do a big benefit for cancer for Cobina Wright. And it was at not the tennis club, the one on Indian, but the one on Baristo. Up by the hill, up by the mountain, you know, the tennis club right there, okay.
Yeah.
And we did a big show up on the top, and I came in and did that show. And I think that was in 1955. That's how long I've been coming here. So I've been a very big part of Palm Springs. They have no idea. I did all the Sinatra shows with the police. I raised money for the police department here, for everything you could imagine here. I did the Chi-Chi Club. I worked with Dave Barry was my opening act, and Rowan and Martin was my opening act the second time I worked there. And
Diane's uncle, he was part owner of the Chi-Chi Club.
Oh, well, you know, Bill Alexander had the band.
Yeah.
Bill's a dear friend of mine. And I ran across all this great publicity. I have stuff that I'm sure the historical part of Palm Springs right now, they have no idea what I've done here because it was before their time. They have all these young people in there, and I could tell them so much about the El Mirado Hotel was the main thing, and Ray Ryan was a dear, dear friend of mine. And
he was from my hometown, Evansville, Indiana.
Yes, that's right.
Where he died.
That's where they killed him.
Yep.
You know, he
Yep.
came out of a health club
Yep.
that night, and he got mixed up. He loved to play cards. Was one of the great gin players in the world. And there's a long story about that happened, but they blew him up in his brand new Continental with his driver. The bomb was so big that it took the windows out of the apartment houses 3 blocks away. But I'll tell you, there wasn't a nicer man in the world than Ray Ryan. He gave so much to people. We became very good friends, very close. And
Bill Holden had that.
Well, he and Bill Holden were like this,
Yeah,
you know.
they had that
Well, that
Safari
Safari
Club.
Club. Yeah, I'm a gold member there.
Right.
Yeah, and Stephanie Pyros and I are very dear friends. She was Bill Holden's lady, you know, and we're very good friends. And I never got a chance to go there. I wanted to go so bad. But I have the plaque with the elephant head on it and my gold card from Bill Holden and Ray Ryan, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a lot of history. And I did all the shows. I was Desert Circus Queen with Kirk Douglas one year, and I did the very last Desert Circus with Trini Lopez. We did the last one that was here, and I was Queen, and he was the Grand Marshal. And funny thing, Frank Bogart was a dear friend of mine. He worked for Ray, you know, at the El Mirador, and then became the mayor of the city.
Right.
And in the last the first time that I was a Desert Circus Queen, they had the rodeo, the big rodeo. And you know, Frank Bogart was a real cowboy.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no doubt about it. He was a out and out, honest to God, real cowboy. And he had some polo ponies that he had. So he let me ride that polo pony in the parade. And every time the Marine band would hit that big drum in front of me, the horse would go like this, you know. And I had these boots on, and I rubbed blisters on my feet trying to hold that horse because we're on the pavement, you know, riding on that thing. And so now we get to the rodeo. So now I couldn't get my boots on. My feet were killing me. So I put moccasins on. And now Frank Bogart says, and now, ladies and gentlemen, here is the queen of the the rodeo in the parade, Miss Roberta Linn. And I give the horse a little kick in the belly. The horse wouldn't move. And I did it again, and the horse wouldn't move. And I'm looking at Frank, what do I do now? So he said, well, we've got the Desert Riders, Roberta, let them come in. So there's about 20 kids riding quarter horses and going, woo, woo, and they come through there, and my horse decides to join them. And he jumped straight up in the air. You know how ponies are. And they pivot. And he got all the way over to the fence across the other side, and he pivoted, and he went around this. Well, I ended up with one leg through the stirrup and under the belly of this horse, holding on like crazy to the saddle. And all of a sudden, here comes Bogart, you know, and he got me by the seat of the pants and pulled me back up in the saddle. I could have broken my neck, you know, but that was my great entrance as queen of the parade in front of all these people. I've never been so embarrassed in my life, you know, but there I was, hanging there by skin of my teeth. But a lot of funny things. But Bogart, I love Frank Bogart. What a nice man. His wife, I saw her a couple of years ago. I have a star in the walk, you know, down at Tockwitz and Palm Canyon, right on the corner by the library. And Frank was there. They had a big affair. We had a big crowd. I couldn't believe it. And Frank was there. And Gustav, you know, I think that was his name, that started the stars in the walk. I have a book. I had the 42nd star. And the Sarners threw a huge party for me after that at the Hearst Mansion. They owned the Hearst Mansion up in the old homes, you know. And yeah, a lot of nice stuff went on in my life.
Yeah, Frank Bogart, I interviewed him a few years ago. He was in World War II. He was in the Navy. He was a deck officer on a cruiser in the Pacific.
I know. I know.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yes, he was wonderful. And I think his wife's name is something like Nadia or something like that.
She's a Mexican
Something similar
girl,
to that, yeah.
Spanish,
And and I saw her. I have her card. I've been meaning to call her because I really, she's such a sweet lady. I think that was his second wife, and she was quite a bit younger than him. But Frank was a great guy. I used to belong to the Desert Riders. And Ray Ryan had a Palomino horse for me over at the Smoke Tree Ranch. And I used to ride in these things, and you never knew who you were going to ride with. You know, there were a lot of movie stars. And one night I heard these two guys laughing like crazy, and one had kind of an English accent. And when we got Tex Kidwell was playing the guitar for all the music by the steak fry, and we get over to Smoke Tree Ranch, and that was Cary Grant and David Niven. And I looked at Cary Grant. The rest of us were all dusty, hair out of place. You know, we'd been riding for quite a while. And I looked at Cary Grant and I said, "Oh, Mr. Grant, you really are perfect." He was so handsome, and I have so many wonderful memories. But the last parade, I think, was in the 80s.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. Trini just passed away.
Yeah, I saw
You know,
that.
yeah, but he was Grand Marshal and I was the Queen of the very last Desert Circus. That was such fun. Why they don't bring that back and have a rodeo and have everybody dressed in their Western outfits. Do you remember Marge Riley? Marge Riley, she made my outfit. What an outfit. I had that with Kirk Douglas. I had pink suede vest and chaps and pink boots and a gorgeous pink hat with flowers on it and a powder blue satin shirt with that pink, you know, with little flowers on the cuffs. She made all that for me. Marge, somewhere I have it somewhere. I hope it's still in halfway decent shape, you know. But Marge Riley, she was in that little development where they had the little houses there right up, Well, everybody dressed, the women dressed so cute, and they had the jails, and to get out of jail, you had to make a donation, you know, and Ray actually, to advertise Palm Springs and everything, he leased a Western Airlines plane, and Dean Martin and Phil Harris, and I don't think Frank went with us on these, but a lot of stars, and we flew to Fort Worth in Dallas, you know, and they treated us royal. I went on those flights and so on, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, let's talk about Mr. Fred Bell, who's the managing director of the Palm Springs Air Museum.
My boy.
Your boy. So could you see at a young age that he would become as...
Oh, are you kidding? At 4 years old, 5 years old, he was making planes and hanging them on the ceiling in his bedroom. And as he grew up, he became more and more enthralled with planes and the wars. You know, what war were they in? How many people could get on that plane? You know, what was the ammunition? You know, how were they used? He grew up with that. This has been his dream. He did a lot of things here. He was head of the Chamber of Commerce in Cathedral City. He was head of the BIA, Building Industry Association. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. I just found an article on him the other day. When he came over from San Antonio. He had gone over there. I had 5 years that I sang at SeaWorld in San Diego from the original owners. And when Milanovic, I think, they did all the books for the schools. They bought SeaWorld. They shipped Freddie to San Antonio to open that SeaWorld over there, which didn't go over too well. So he ended up with IMAX Theaters. And then he and his wife, his first wife, divorced, and then he met Lisa, who now runs the Smoke Tree Ranch, you know, doing a great job. And they moved over here. So I helped Freddie a lot, introducing him to people and so on. I did a lot of shows for him when he was at Cathedral City, you know, to raise money and to help him and so on. He started in public relations, and then by meeting a lot of people and so on, he ended up as head of the chamber for Cathedral City. And then he just blossomed from there, you know, and I'm amazed. He's a walking encyclopedia for the plains and the wars. And every time I see him, I'm more amazed. He has all these little films he's doing now that are going out on, is it Facebook or?
YouTube.
On YouTube. And I caught a few of those. I had no idea he did them. He never tells me anything. He's so busy. And of course, with this virus, right now I hardly see my family because they're so afraid that being around me, because they're around a lot of people, that they might infect me. So our relationship is on texting and on the phone. And
So when Fred first came to Palm Springs, you were already living here?
oh, I was already here, yeah.
When did you move here permanently then?
The last time in 2000, but I was in and out of Palm Springs. I had properties here and lived here a bit, and then moved back to LA or San Diego or something. But when my mother passed, my mother died very suddenly. I still have a coat she was making the day before she died that I wear on stage. It's beautiful. And she never finished the inside of it, but I still wear it. And she went in the hospital one day and died the next. And so it was such a shock. And then I rented the house in San Diego and I came over here. I worked at the Desert Isle for my friend Henry Maxwell that owned the Desert Isle there on 111, you know, where it comes around, the one next to the Manhattan now. That was his restaurant. And he asked me if I'd come over and help him with some public relations and so on. And then they had some guy doing some timeshare presentations. So I was so depressed. I went through a terrible depression losing my mom. And anyway, that's how I got back over here.
But you had lived in San Diego for a period of time?
Well, how I moved to San Diego was I went to SeaWorld and I did a concert in the park with the symphony. And they liked me so much they gave me a 5-year contract. So I eventually moved from Northridge down here. And I stayed for quite a while.
In San Diego?
That was kind of a blur in there because I went through this terrible depression with losing my mom and stuff. And,
so were you and Fred at SeaWorld at the same time?
Oh, I got Freddie his job there,
Okay.
managing the parking lot. And they liked him so much that they kept promoting him and then sending him to San Antonio to open that SeaWorld there. So Freddie... yeah, I introduced him down there and got him his job. And then when he came over here, I tried to do the same thing to introduce him to people that I knew that I thought might be helpful for him. And then, of course, he took the ball and ran with it, you know. But he is so talented, and he loves this place so much. This is a terrible time for all businesses, including... the museum right now. They can't do their big benefits like they did before, so he's trying to be creative.
Yeah, well, that's what his marketing is so good.
Well, he's brilliant. I don't know where he got that, but I tell you, he's brilliant. And
he's willing to willing to try anything.
I know.
And see if it works.
And I'm extremely proud of him, you know. And Lisa, his wife, and now my granddaughter, Heather, is working here, helping him in special events and so on.
Doing really well.
She's very quiet within herself, you know. But
now, okay, so you had a daughter named Angela?
My daughter Angela, she's my little sweetheart.
Where does she?
She's up in Sparks, Nevada now, and she has 2 children. and both of them gave me grandbabies, so I'm a great-grandma now. Oh. I have Lydia that was born about 4 weeks ago in Las Vegas, and Josh's son was born in Sparks. He was living with Angela up there. He's back in San Diego now with his wife, and that's James. James is about a year old now. So I have 2 great-grandchildren and 5 grandchildren altogether. Freddie has 3, and Angela has 2.
What are the names of the grandchildren?
My grandchildren, oh my gosh, here you go. I've got Stephen and Josh with Angela, and I have Heather and Cameron and Zachary with Fred.
Okay, that's good.
I did very good, didn't
Yes,
I?
you did.
Okay.
Now,
Zachary's the youngest.
Now, before the COVID came along, what are your main interests these days?
Well, you're not going to believe this, but show business is my life. Singing is my life, okay? And I was doing a few little jobs and so on, but I was looking for a place to kind of restart my career. So I started, my friend who booked some places, I was working Lions Supper Club. So he said, you know what? He said, you'd be great in timeshare. I said, I don't know anything about it. That's not my cup of tea. Talk to me about it. He said, look, I just happened to get a real estate license by chance. My girlfriend had 10 children. Her oldest daughter went to Anthony's school. And she said, why don't you go with me and you can get a real estate. I said, what am I going to do with a real estate license? I'm an entertainer. I'm not going to sell real estate. You know, I'm not that I wouldn't like to, but that's not what I want to do. Well, I had a real estate license. So they said, go over to Marriott and interview with them. I had done a little bit of work with the timeshare with Jim Watkins that had gas lamps and had that wonderful Winter Circle Resort right across from Del Mar Racetrack, next to Tractons.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, yeah, and I did some podiums for him while I was trying to help my daughter out, okay? And so I was bringing in a little money. And so I go to Marriott, and in Newport Beach, actually. And I got the job. Okay, so there were 5 of us, and we opened the Newport property for Marriott. Gorgeous property, right on the side of the hill overlooking the ocean. And I opened there, and then I was offered a job in-house at the Marriott Desert Springs Hotel. So I did the in-house. In-house, about 5 of us handled all these people. Well, for some reason, I don't know why. Well, and my notoriety, I think, too, from Welk and being in show business helped me a lot. I just started selling timeshares like crazy, you know, and I became a presidential sales executive with them. I opened Shadow Ridge before they even had a unit and sold those like hotcakes. I opened up the place in Vegas. I sold Hawaii. I sold, you know, and I couldn't believe it. So I was with him 14 years. Okay. Now I've got this lull. So I thought, well, why don't I try to do something? So I was working Lions for David Christopher, a good friend of mine. I did a lot of booking here. Wonderful little singer, by the way. And so he said, there's a room downtown. And he said, I don't know whether you'll like it or not. He said, they do some shows on the weekend where they have the, dressers, female dressers. But he said it's very classy, you know, it's a very classy thing. And the fellow that was doing the emceeing, I had known him from L.A. when he was in La Cage aux Folles. So I go and I look at the room and I thought, what a nice little showroom. Seats about 100 people, had a nice stage, had spotlight, had good sound. And I thought, okay, well, maybe if I work the early part of the week. So I went in and I packed the house the first night. Okay, so I brought my piano player that's been working with me for years, Johnny Mercer's son-in-law. His name is Bob Corwin, one of the greatest jazz piano players and accompanists in the world. He's a dying breed. And my drummer's been with me 30 years now. And I brought these guys in, and they're all great looking guys, great musicians. So we go in and we break it up. Then I came back Valentine's Day, tore it up again. We packed the room. And so I stayed on there for a little while. And then I started doing some outside things. And then I started not feeling well. Something was going on. I didn't know what. And so what I had to do was try to find out what was going on. So I went to Eisenhower a few times, emergency. They sent me home, and I'd go out and do another show. So on June 2nd, it'll be, it was like almost 2 years now. I was at Joslin Center for Paul Newman's brother and his wife have that place. And we were sold out. And I get over there and I wasn't feeling really well. I got in the dressing room and, excuse me for telling you this, but I just threw up all over the dressing room. The place is packed, the band's on stage, and my friend Vicki Knight, who's also a singer, she went with me. She said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't think I can do the show." She says, "You've got a house full of people and the band's on stage." I said, "I know, but Vicki, I'm so sick, I don't think I can do it." She said, "Let me get you dressed." So she got me dressed, put a chair on stage, put a bucket under the stage, the chair. And I went on stage, I did a 50-minute show. I got to everything but Wind Beneath My Wings, which is my closing number. And I finally told the people, I said, "Folks, I'm not feeling the very best. I really can't do anymore. I hope you enjoyed the show." Well, they gave me a standing ovation. Some guy came up and gave me flowers. They thought I was kidding. Because I was on stage, I got in the dressing room, all over the dressing room again. I was so deathly sick. And so Vicki and my drummer got me back to the house, and they called 911. And because I'm in terrible pain now with my stomach. And so they rushed me over to the hospital. They made fun of me. They called me a frequent flyer. This is my first time being there, okay? And I'm in so much pain. They took me in, and they finally gave me a shot of morphine to kill the pain, and Freddie shows up. You know, and every time I was there, he was always there for me, my son. And so the doctor said, "You know, Mr. Bill, there's nothing wrong with your mother. She's an actress. She's overacting. She's got the flu. Take her home." And Freddie said, "Wait a minute. This is the fourth time my mother's been here. Why would you give her morphine if she's got the flu? She's in pain." So as the good Lord was smiling down on me, Fred knew Dr. Carl Schultz. I think he's a donator here to the museum too, I believe. And he and his brother have an office together at Eisenhower. He happened to be in the hospital that night. So Freddie got a hold of me. He came down and got some x-rays of my stomach, and he came back and he said, "Fred and Roberta," he said, I've got good news and bad news. We got to do surgery right away or your mother's going to die." So they got me in the hospital, and what had happened, I'd had some surgeries, prior surgeries. Intestines were wrapped with the scar tissue from all this, and so on. So he went in, operated. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks and rehab for 3 weeks. Then I got out, then my hip started hurting me. And then in July, this past July, I had a new hip put in. And then they went in and looked at my heart. And here I am. I'm still here.
Yes, you are.
And God's been good. Freddie was with me through the whole thing. And I'm so proud of him. And I love the museum. I really do. I wish I could do more. I have done some shows here in the past on the Bob Hope stage and so on. I think the timing was bad when we were doing it. They brought me in the summer when they didn't have any air conditioning. And it was a little tough in there, you know, but we still did it. I did some other shows with Pat Rizzo and the big band and their in the past. That was before Freddie actually came into the picture here. But yeah, I've been a part of Palm Springs, the Air Museum, for many, many years. And I'm so happy that you invited me on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Roberta. Yeah, I guess we're getting close to wrapping it up. Any parting thoughts?
I'm sorry?
Any parting thoughts?
Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, before we
Uh,
wrap up.
Well, I'm hoping that because of all the stuff stuck down my throat, it's affected my vocal cords a little bit. So I've been working with Seth Riggs, who is a wonderful vocal coach. I've got it on my computer, and so I'm trying to see if, God willing, that I can maybe do some shows and raise some money for the Veterans Association and the poor vets that have no homes right now. There's so many of them on the street. So that would be my thrill, you know, that before I take the big trip. You know, I'm going to be 93 years old on my next birthday in April. April 30th is my birthday.
I meant to ask you, your brother, was he in World War II?
My brother, oh yes, he was in the Air Force. And what I'm trying to do right now, I still have his ashes. Oh. And I'm trying to find out, I know they gave you a wonderful military funeral at Forest Lawn. I had it for him. And I do have his ashes, but I would like to see if I could get him buried close here. They were talking about Riverside. Yeah. But he deserves better than sitting on a shelf. You know, I would like him to have something and something close by where I can go visit and be with him, you know.
The National Cemetery in Riverside is really nice.
Yes, but it's so far away.
Well,
I don't know whether there's anything I could do here.
Oh.
I
Well,
guess
they have in Cthulhu City where Frank Sinatra is, and
yes,
they have some.
that's Forest Lawn, and I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if they might have something for the vets in there. I
think they do.
Do they?
do.
Maybe
Yeah.
I could call them
Yeah, I
and
would
see.
check that out.
I would really. It would be a blessing because then he's close to me, you know, and we can be close together for this time.
Roberta, I want to thank you for your service to our country, your
Thank you,
service
Dave.
to Palm Springs and to the Air Museum, and to all the veterans. And thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us today.
Thank you. I'm very, very happy to be an American vet. That I served some time in the military, quite by accident. but I did have some good service during that time, and I'm grateful for that. And I really love all the military fellas and their wives. The wives deserve medals too, you know, for all that they have to go through and have had gone through the wars. So may I say today, God bless all the veterans on this Veterans Day. May I pray for all of you in God's name, in Jesus' name, amen.
And we all love you.
Thank you.